All right, guys, we're going to move on. This is a spicier topic, so we're going to. I want to treat this with as much care as we possibly can. So it says transgender Marvel actor says the MCU's LGBTQ representation is not good enough. What I found the most interesting out of this entire article is how little they actually care about the actual world of filmmaking or the characters or anything to do with anything other than activism. And that, to me, is a problem. So it says Spider-Man Far From Home actor Zach Barak, it could be Barack, I'm not sure, who is transgender, is taking aim at Disney, saying that the Hollywood studio is not doing enough to champion LGBTQ roles in comic book-based films and TV shows. Now, remember when I said earlier about why critics care about certain genres? They care about comic books because it's tethered to, they believe, to youthful audiences. I would argue, and I think you would argue, that it's millennials. That's such an outdated belief. Yes, but I think that that's where they see the social capital in it, which is why the messaging is more ham-fisted and more seemingly forced into those genres, science fiction and comic books. So it says, Barack became the first openly transgender actor to be featured in a Marvel film, portraying Zack in the 2019 film starring Tim Holland. I'm guessing they mean Tom Holland.
Funny how your character had to have
the same first name,
your legal name, because representation is about you.
Well, that or like yeah. So it says, but even though the Marvel Cinematic Universe has debuted a growing list of gay characters, Barack says that the studio has not done enough to help the gay community. It's not good enough, he said in an interview with Digital Spy. On some fundamental level, even seeing Batgirl shelved, which is not Marvel, it all boils down to what we value, which is not femininity. Thoughts, Mary?
Well, continued.
Yes, yeah.
That's where hating trans people in a lot of ways comes from. That we don't want people to act less than what we see, which is often masculinity. Which is why it's a lot less dangerous to be a trans guy than it is to be a trans girl or trans feminine person.
I have to ask a question first. What is trans feminine? I don't actually understand that term.
Me neither.
Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I guess anyone who appears feminine, which kind of puts femininity in more of a box than it otherwise would have been. But
would you agree that the argument here is actually semi-correct in the fact that they don't value femininity, but they're getting their conclusion wrong? That Hollywood doesn't value actual femininity, but they're talking about it on a surface level.
There are so many layers of like deception and
we haven't even gotten
like
to
ulterior motives in saying that we don't value femininity here that I can't even begin to
let's read the
correct
rest.
it.
Yeah, let's read the rest of it because it gets more manipulative the farther you go down the article. It says, so that's one of the reasons it's harmful. But then more directly, just make the characters trans and face the consequences, Barack says. Be brave.
Consequences.
Be brave, do something. It's like he's quoting Project Veritas right there. Be brave, do something in the world so that when you die, you're like, I'm glad I tried that and don't regret not doing it. Barack also insisted that he has had trouble dealing with people who are more focused on ticket sales than on pushing the queer agenda, and that those that don't understand how the agenda could help change American culture. And because of that, Barack insisted that everyone needs to push the LGBTQ agenda.
If the MCU were more interested in ticket sales than pushing an agenda, then we would know it.
Yeah. They wouldn't be bragging every time that they let a movie die in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, or any of these places that ban the movies with LGBTQ themes.
And framing a profit-driven business model as a bad thing is so telling.
It's also funny.
You need to be profit-driven in order to push social messaging, period, even if that is your ultimate goal.
They're literally
you
existing
need
on the
money
backs of the
to
profit.
do that first. You need eyes on screens.
And it really goes to show how much, what's the word? People that protest? What's good?
Protesters?
Activists. It goes to show how much activists are being pandered to right now.
Yeah. That
this person is flabbergasted that a company would value profit over narrative.
It's very hard to believe that there's actually people that don't understand why that makes no sense.
What are we teaching in schools.
Yep.
Like,
I'm just saying, even from their perspective, if the message is more important than the money, you need the money before you can push the message.
listen,
Let's go through it bit by bit then first. So I want to talk about femininity first. I want to talk about femininity. What did you make of that statement? Do you actually believe that they don't value femininity?
It's pointing out a problem that does exist, and we can observe that from the way that female characters are written, especially in the MCU.
Yep.
Okay, we have what are called Mary Sues, or, girl bosses, whatever you want to call them, like women who have unshakable resolve. They never make mistakes. They always make up for the mistakes of men around them who are just blundering idiots. Yep. And they don't have any of the vulnerability that just any full human being has, and especially vulnerabilities that are particular to them being female, such as physical prowess in fights.
It's why they love superhero movies, because the characters are overpowered anyway, so they don't have to actually adhere to any type of reality.
Yeah, and that's not exclusive to the MCU, and it's not the MCU that's inflicting that on the rest of entertainment. It's happening in a lot of different...
And not even just sci-fi or anything. Like
not just in the genre. It's in every genre. It's on streaming, it's in theaters.
Regular characters too, not even superhero characters. Like one day, like there's like somebody made I was watching a stream once where this guy's talking about, like, there's going to be women one day who are going to be absolutely shocked that when they punch a dude in the face, he doesn't fly 50 feet behind him.
So we are attributing all strength in a female character to how well they can imitate
men.
What is conventionally thought of as masculinity.
Yeah.
But even masculinity is cheapened in doing so, because masculinity isn't just about being emotionless and physically strong.
Actually,
so you're cheapening both.
Is there actually an argument to be made here that the superhero genre, even for the men, denigrates masculinity in the sense that there's less consequences because they're superhuman, whereas part of being a male that's protecting his family, he risks being harmed, whereas these people don't actually see consequences for their actions if they're a man either?
Yeah, and basically that the only way to be a man is to be a beefcake as well.
Well, superheroes are inherently atomized by the fact that they're overpowered, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's an interesting thought. And I also read certain analyses of Superman, especially, that he is sort of an Ubermenschian character.
Because Spider-Man, despite the fact that he's like the relatable one, even he got jacked overnight.
Yeah. Well,
after the Spider-Man, he was like,
so where are the stakes to sacrificing yourself for other people when you are literally almost invincible, if not completely?
Right. Well, yeah, Superman basically, his is like, he doesn't get to, like, for Batman, it's that the stakes are that, well, he can also be physically harmed, but you don't get to tell the people that you love that you are this person, even though you'd like to. That's kind of the same for a lot of them, right? It's like you have to keep your identity a secret, which prevents you from being able to really tell the people you love who you really are, because you're trying to keep them safe.
The superhero narrative, I think, has done a lot to denigrate the hero's journey narrative.
Yep.
And that's a new thing.
I blame the science.
Well, in a way, when I think of Superman, the whole thing is that he's kind of a little baby, but he has he has the tools to fix his situations always. So that's kind of a message, I guess, in a way, for people in general. Is like when you buckle down and you put your mind to it, you can solve it. But in his case, it's because he's super jacked and laser eyes.
So I'm just thinking of this comment here, getting back to what Barack said. He insisted that he has trouble dealing with people who are more focused on ticket sales than on pushing the queer agenda, and that those people don't understand how the agenda could help change American culture. I'm thinking about that as I'm making the thumbnail for this today, and all his pictures are at these extravagant opening day premieres, which cost thousands upon thousands of dollars to make and put on, off the back off the backs of tickets and comics and toys and everything that need to be sold so that you can come there and complain that you're not getting representative enough. Also, I want to point out that we did have this other article from earlier this year that says that the GLAAD found that broadcast TV now features a record number of LGBTQ representation. The number was 11.9% of characters on network television are LGBTQ, and according to Gallup, in America, 7.1% of the population is LGBTQ. I would guess that number is high. I've seen
there are ways to fudge those numbers.
Yes. But the point is, whether you're talking 3.8% or the high end of 7.1, you are now overrepresented.
And I also know for a fact that Hollywood as a whole is overrepresented from the LGBT community.
23%.
They're like 23%.
Yep.
So I was expecting it to be even higher than 11.9.
Yep. That's just the people that come out. Like they've talked a lot about in the industry.
The 11. They're saying the characters on the shows.
I would expect the characters to be higher than 11.9% based on the fact that people in Hollywood making these shows are way overrepresented.
The other funny thing about that is that it's 11.9% with the possibility that literally any character can be revealed as bisexual at any time if the writers feel like it. Yeah. And that happens
awfully
all
convenient.
the time. And this is what I'm saying. Somebody like me who doesn't care who you sleep with, doesn't care what gender you are, doesn't care about even seeing the stuff in the show as long as it makes sense. How this person is talking about it makes everyone less inclined to watch or to want to watch.
It's so conflicting reading this interview because Zach Barak is talking about how these characters aren't giving enough sheer screen time for you to make a judgment on whether their representation is sufficient. However, and that's part of the problem, as they say. However, if you want to be fully assimilated and represented and included in all of these scripts, then shouldn't you blend in?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then also, if their transness doesn't have to take center stage in the show, like they say, that's just how you get transgender characters that are well fleshed out, and transness is part of them. It doesn't have to be all of them. That balance can't be done as effectively without the voice of a trans person in the writer's room. If their transness is supposed to be just some kind of almost irrelevant detail to this character, then
just like your straightness should be an irrelevant detail.
You're calling for two different strategies. Yep. Like, should this person's transness take center focus or not? Should this character blend in completely with the rest of the cast because there's nothing notable about them being trans?
And let's face it.
Not.
And let's face it, when you, if the show isn't about that, there isn't enough time. There will never be enough time because the issue is so deep, so complex, and has so many facets to it that if you want to fully explore it, the whole show will have to be about that. Otherwise, it will always feel like you're paying lip service.
Also, don't you feel like this trivializes the experience of being trans anyway, because you're talking about superheroes who are generally like genetic mutants or like they gain powers from like accidents, or they were like, I mean, there are so many different narratives as to why a superhero is overpowered, why they're different and why they struggle with that. And you're kind of, by adding them being trans into the plot and paying extra attention to that, you're putting that real experience on the level of something fictional.
I just get tired of the vague calculus that all these activist classes always have. It's always like, well, no, there should be more of this and more of that and more of this and more of that. It's like, okay, so what do you take out?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like...
The ultimate challenge is like, do it yourself and see what happens. Like, is it really that easy?
Right.
And it says that's where...
And don't focus on money.
Yeah.
Right.
Says that's where hating trans people comes from. They always also talk about it being dangerous, vaguely dangerous. It's always vaguely dangerous. What does that mean? Give me actual statistics or a problem we can solve, not platitudes. And
I'd love to know what Batgirl getting shelved has to do with devaluing femininity.
It's it's
what?
It's just a buzzword. It's just
I wanted to pull up a TikTok earlier that perfectly encapsulates this gobbledygook language.
The issue with like the activist class is that they never ever have to substantiate any of their points.
Yeah,
all they talk about is like it's a multifaceted issue where everyone's perspective needs to be heard, and that's like what's really
and that's all higher
beautiful
education
about
man.
it.
It's designed to not have a solution.
Higher education is all about sounding smart instead of saying anything of actual substance or intelligence. It was the most frustrating thing during, not as much during my bachelor's, but my master's definitely. Everything was about reevaluating the paradigms and realizing what is the point where the intersections meet in junction.
Postmodern.
It's like, what did you say?
Yeah.
And how
Nothing.
can we look at it through this lens that represents everyone's values?
Oh my God, yeah.
And then amplify those voices that don't get heard. And it's just like, blah, 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 blah. Like, say something that means
Sir, this
something,
is a Wendy's.
please.
Like,
yes.
what do you want to eat?
Right.
And what I found is that they say a lot because let's say an expert can explain something to you very quickly with less words, and when you don't understand what you're talking, or you're being purposely nefarious and you're trying to obfuscate what your actual point is because you just want to gain social capital without actually asking for any actual meaningful change, meaning they're not proposing anything, they're just saying more, and the answer is always more.
The most genius idea I've heard about how to deal with activists in the workplace is you get those people and you give them the promotion that they want. However, if they can do all their agenda stuff and promote and do whatever, if they don't have tangible results within an agreed upon timeline, birth control, and you get fired.
See, we value femininity here,
right?
Gosh.
Because you said that you had the answer for an issue. You were given the resources. You were given the authority to fix the workplace in the vision that you see correctly.
Yep.
Here you go. Go ahead and do it. And we have an agreed upon time frame. And if you fail, you are fired, and we're not doing it.
Technically, if activists were being honest, then
they fought for president.
If activists were being honest, they would admit that by promulgating the problem further is what their actual job is, because they put themselves out of work if they actually solve the problem. So to actually do your job as an activist, your goal is to make the problem worse, not make the problem better.
Also, I hate that just existing as someone who identifies as like trans or LGBT, whatever, in Hollywood automatically throws you into the camp of Hollywood actor/activists. Yep. Like, you have to be an activist because you share this label with people.
Really pumped on the idea of like the people that put that off. I was looking into I watched a Goofy movie this weekend, and I was reading about Tevin Campbell, who sang the Powerline songs in that movie, and they talked about how in his Wikipedia they're talking about how his sexuality was a huge question for years. Like, people didn't know whether, like, they would actually ask, like, is he gay, is he not gay, and he never understood why. He's like, why is it so fascinating to you whether I'm gay or not? It shouldn't matter. But then finally, like, I was like, oh wow, he's like kind of based. He's like, I don't give. He's like, it's not important. And then finally, of course, in 2022 or something, he's like came out and made a big deal about it. I was like, just imagine, like, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there was just a different mindset that you did actually want to just be like everyone else, and it didn't matter.
But they're both freaking snarky about it. It's like, why do you care? And the other was like, why don't you care? It's like, freaking A, man.
Well,
like,
the guy's been bothered about it for years, people asking him questions about it. So.
No, I understand that point of view more than the latter, but it's still, it's always a approach from the point of view. It's like, why don't you psychically know how I want to approach this subject?
It just boggles my mind. Like this, it's very clearly a power grab, and it's very clearly the person doesn't care about the movies, doesn't care about source material, doesn't care about the art form of film, doesn't care about the business of film, only cares about activism, and they promote it. Why? Like, it's not helping box office. You could say it's because they want to be good people, but everyone knows that people in Hollywood aren't good people, so that's not the answer. Maybe it's to assuage the guilt of their creepy pedo islands. I don't freaking know. Like,
this interview in particular being so verbose and just meandering and having no ultimate point, no ultimate goals are talked about, and there aren't any terms being set.
Yeah.
It really just shows either that this person is not properly like media trained to do interviews, or secondly, they're intentionally obfuscating the point or the question.
I don't think you can media train for this either.
I lean towards intentional.
In terms of asking for getting the answers of the questions that we're asking, you can't media train for that, because all you can do is like browbeat and reprimand and do what they're doing. It's like, well, there's not enough, frankly.
There's always more work to be done, but not by me.
Yeah,
that's always the answer.
That child from a Fed that wanted to open like a diverse like pillow company.
What?
David Hogg.
Oh, David Hogg. Yeah.
Oh, to like.
Yeah, he wanted to
rival My Pillow.
He was like, oh no, we're everyone's gonna get a puppy dog and everyone's gonna earn 6 figures and we're gonna make the best pillows. It's gonna be great.
Pillows.
Pillows.
Oh,
my bad.
I was like, damn, multifaceted company right there. Pills and pillows.
He quit in like a week.
Yeah.
He was like, no, I can't do this.
Yeah, they've never, the people who tend to be the most fervent activists have never actually.
There are so many benchmarks to meet, and I get to be the consultant that doesn't do any of the work, but tells you what to do.
Yeah. That's the whole area of DC, is a bunch of people being like, well, this lunch is going to cost you this, and I'm really going to tell you another thing. We'll talk about that on the next lunch. And then the next lunch is like, well, this lunch is going to cost you this. Like, they don't do anything.
Has entered the chat. Allow me. Why don't you give me a job so I can tell you how sexist your game is?
Beat it.
Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.